Hi everybody, welcome to Caketastic Cakes. It's Jen and I'm going to show you how to make Bartleby from True in the Rainbow Kingdom out of gum paste. Okay, before we begin, if you see any tools or supplies that I'm using that you could use, if you check the link in the description below, it should be able to help you out. Okay, we are going to start with his body. I made Bartleby before, and we're going to make him again. I made him standing, and I made him out of black gum paste before. He was a little too dark, so I'm going more purpley this time. And I wanted to try a different pose. I chose something more kind of fun. You could see in the picture that's going to be coming up soon. He's kind of laying on his belly with his legs kicked up and relaxed. So that's what we're going with. Now, this piece I'm messing with right here is going to be his body. As you can see, it was kind of a sausage that I tapered, and at the tapered end I cut it off short. That lollipop stick is going to support his leg. I decided, like I said, to have him kind of relaxed on his back, so I figured his feet in the air would be more of a fun pose than just standing stiff and straight. And because his legs are going to be in the air, you can see the picture in the back in the little corner there. His tail's going to be up in the air. I get asked a lot if you can use fondant for these decorations. Some of them you could get away with it. This one, I don't think you could. I think you'd either need to use gum paste or add Tylose to your fondant because they're thin pieces that are going to be up in the air and they will just flop and sag otherwise. So anyway, back to Bartleby. Okay, I rolled out that other piece of gum paste as you saw, long and thin, ran it up the length of my lollipop stick hair that I had bent, and I'm flattening off the one end and trying to keep the leg pretty much the same thickness all the way through. Because I had to push it up the stick and bend it, it ended up losing its shape a little bit, so you are having me edit out many minutes of me going squeeze, 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 trying to get it back into shape. But eventually I got there. In order to attach the leg, I'm going to use the other piece of lollipop stick to make a hole in the body. I'm kind of flossing it out there with some water on my paintbrush, and then slide my lollipop stick right on in there until they connect, and there you go. There you go. He's got one leg up in the air already. This is going to be his other leg. Same idea as before. I have the piece that I rolled out. It's going to be the nice and long and kind of thin, not too thin. His arms are going to be thinner, so be careful of that. Make sure they're the same length. That's always good when your legs are the same length. And I'm putting it on another lollipop stick. This one I'm going to only have it on a little bit, and I'm going to have his leg bent up over toward his bottom more so you're not needing that extra support that the other leg had. You see how it's kind of more touching up toward his bottom there. That's why I didn't bother with the lollipop stick there. So it's okay if the weight, gravity pulls on the weight of the leg to make it bend a little bit more. This big old piece here is going to be his head. Now, Bartleby has a massive head. It's huge, it's heavy, it's a pain in the butt to work with some figures like this that their heads are so big because it's heavy. I had to leave the body to sit for a while, like several hours actually, in order to firm up enough to be able to support this head. So I took a big thick piece as you saw. I have it all kind of like a rounded off rectangle almost. It's a little more rounded on the top than the bottom. I made two wells with my ball tool for the eyes. His eyes are huge, so don't forget that part. They're huge. They are just above center in his head, and they are kind of far apart. There is going to be room for his nose in the middle. They're pretty wide set, so just keep that in mind also. I'm just using some white gum paste in each of the eye sockets, using my ball tool to kind of smooth and fill it all in and round it out, and also to make them spread out a little wider if they're not even, or if one's smaller or bigger than the other. That little bit of purple is going to be his muzzle, so that goes right between the eyes, but kind of in line with the bottom of the eyes, so be careful of that. I made a couple more little wells inside the white of the eyes. It's hard to see. I don't know if you could see it or not, but it's there. And I'm going to fill it in with the blue of his irises. His eyes are blue, but they have a ton of shading going on with them. They almost look black at the top in some pictures, so you're going to see what I do with that to make it darker later on in the video. But in the meantime, I started with a light blue as a base. I'm going to darken it up as we go. I'm adding his pupils, just a couple balls of black. And make sure that the pupils are big. He doesn't have like a lot of the blue showing in his eyes. This little purple triangle I'm working on down here is going to become his ears. His ears are very small, and they are just very gently curved little triangles. I kind of press down in the center as you saw just to make a little indentation. I'm adding a little bit of water and putting it on his head. And his ears do not go on the top of his head, they kind of go on the corners. Remember I said his head was kind of rectangular, sort of? Imagine the top corners then of that rectangle, that's where his ears are going to go. And so make sure you keep them small, keep them real set apart and right on those corners, not on the top. I did the same thing on the other side, had my little tiny rectangle, kind of hollowed out the center a little bit, just pressed down to make it more cat-like, a little bit of water, stick it into place, and there you go. See, not too shabby. And I also wanted to let you know too, when I made this, when I made him, his color, I added some black to my purple to kind of darken it up because he's a very, very rich, deep, kind of like a midnight purple. He's not, just typical purple. I took a little piece of purple and just made a happy face on it, pressed it into his face, a little bit below his nose there. And his nose, his muzzle, his nose I'm attaching to his muzzle right now. It's just a little tiny triangle of light purple. It was hard for me to pick the color for this because I saw a lot of different pictures of him where it had more of a pinkish tint or purple or black almost. I just took the one that I thought looked best. I thought the light purple looked good. I'm giving him two little teeny tiny black eyebrows. They are just very small and curved to follow the shape of his eye, kind of off center toward the outside corner of his eyes. On each eye, I'm now going to add a little white highlight of gum paste, a little dot and a little dot, make him all bright and sparkly eyed. And now I am going to show you how I added his whiskers. His whiskers are just pieces of black gum paste that I just rolled between my fingers really long and thin, as you can see, real skinny, and trim them so that they fit into place. And make sure when you place them, watch the location of them. They're supposed to kind of stick out, but I have to mail this guy, so it wasn't going to happen. They would break in the mail. So I stuck them to his face, and he has the longer ones on the top, the shorter ones on the bottom. Okay, and this is where I was talking before about his eyes, how it's dark blue and almost black at the top. I'm using an edible food coloring marker. I have like a royal blue, so it's kind of a darker blue. And I'm coloring in the top half of the blue of his eyes. Now I'm going to take my paintbrush here that's wet with water, and I'm going to just brush it down and kind of blend it all in together. So only really the very bottom of his eyes is going to have that little bit of the original sky blue color left. The rest is going to be dark. And you could even take it a step further and put a little bit of black food coloring on the top, very top of the eye, and blend that into the dark blue too if you want, but I didn't do that. I thought it'd be too dark. Okay, this is going to be his tail. Remember when I said before that I wouldn't use fondant with this because some of the things are just going to be too thin and up in the air, wouldn't hold right? His tail is exactly why. I'm using a piece of dried spaghetti instead of a lollipop stick because his tail is skinny and small. As you can see, I threaded it on. I rolled it till it's nice and smooth and even in thickness. And I'm just kind of hooking it over like a letter J or a candy cane or anything you want to, associate with that shape. I'm using another piece of dried spaghetti to poke a little hole in his bottom so that when he is ready for the tail to be attached, they can just slide it right in there and it'll just work perfectly. Now, as you can see, I am putting the head in, or I'm going to put the head in at an angle. So I had a piece of lollipop stick that I stuck the body in right there at an angle, and I'm doing this on top of styrofoam so that way the body won't have to support the weight of the head quite yet. It will, give it a chance to dry and harden without getting smushed. I also put the lollipop stick into the head itself at an angle, so now when I put them all together, it all just matches up like magic. Okay, this is going to be one of his arms. It's going to be his little front arm. Same as the legs, same as the tail. I just rolled it out long and thin, kind of flatten off the bottom a little bit. I'm going to use another piece of dried spaghetti to hold it in place. And I'm going to have it bent up, as you can see, so it looks like he's looking at something. I ended up putting a little gum paste flour that I had an extra of in his paw, just so he could, be sitting there enjoying the day, looking at a little flower. And I also need to mention, too, that I did put his tail aside overnight as well as his body to harden up so that when I slide it in, as you're going to see in a moment, it'll all be nice and firm and stiff and won't lose its shape. So I supported the arm with a piece of paper towel, as you saw. I also put a piece under the head to support it, and I left him overnight, so he dried overnight. This is the next day. I have his last arm that I am attaching. I just put another piece, that I rolled out nice and even and long, kind of at the shoulder there, and I'm having it come up under his head and his paws on his cheek there. Last thing to do, stick that tail in place, and there you go. You got Bartleby, right? Not too shabby, and he's looking cute and nice and casual, having a nice day. So I hope you found this video helpful. Please like and subscribe because I find that helpful. I've got a lot of other videos out there, so please check those out, as well as True on her buddy Cumulo. So if you want to see that, look for it in my playlists. And as always, thank you for watching Caketastic Cakes.